talking Ouija, Origin of Evil. This is a 2016 movie directed by Mike Flanagan. Now, Mike Flanagan's actually become quite a big name in horror, having directed obviously this, Oculus, and of course the beloved kind of Haunting of Bly Manor, Haunting of Hill House TV shows and such. So this was actually a sequel to the 2014 movie called Ouija, neither of which I have seen until now. And this one is actually a prequel that kind of takes place in the 1960s, set before the 2014 movie Ouija, which at this time of recording this I still haven't seen. So I thought I would watch this one first, because I understand this one was the more well-received one. Now, interestingly, Ouija, is the kind of, as we know it, the name is actually the name that a lot of people tend to use for spirit boards. But Ouija is actually a kind of a trademark of Hasbro. So they actually kind of, own the brand, if you like, of Ouija. Much like, for example, you confuse things like sellotape with the sticky black plastic, or, sparkling wine, you call it champagne. These things are kind of like, the actual names are actually specifically owned by a particular kind of company, but they tend to be used in the general lexicon. So, and I wonder how they've got away with it, because there's a lot of, low budget movies called Ouija something or other. So Hasbro clearly aren't that kind of too precious with the trademark for this one. But here we are in the official Hasbro trademark Ouija movie. So this is, of course, I say the second one, but it is a prequel taking place in the 1960s, and we have a mother who is essentially a fraudulent spirit medium, and she's kind of doing all these fronts for these kind of like these paying customers, pretending to kind of like contact the afterlife and stuff, and she's helped by her two daughters, a slightly older kind of teenage daughter and a young child of about I think about 9 or 10 or so. And they decide that they're going to buy this kind of Ouija board, which you used to be able to buy in toy shops and things like this, to add a new prop to their kind of performance, so to speak. But inadvertently, they do actually contact some spirits. And initially, it seems great. They actually seem quite helpful. But then, of course, we learn, as you'd probably expect, there's a darker presence there. Now, what will happen? You have to watch the movie and find out. So if you're a fan of the Mike Flanagan catalogue of products, films and kind of TV, you'll be pleased to know, if you haven't already seen this, there's actually a slew of Mike Flanagan regulars on this in this movie that you'll kind of recognise from his haunting kind of TV shows and everything, including Henry Thomas as kind of the local kind of priest. So what do we think works? This is a solid horror movie. I mean, like I said, I still haven't seen the first one yet. But I was I don't know, I was never too interested in watching these movies, but I've got to say, I'm pleased that I have finally kind of got around to watching this a number of years after it was released, because it was a fairly decent and well put together movie. Obviously the production values here coming from a kind of a more major kind of studio, it looks good, it's got lots of kind of like, obviously in comparison to its peers, high production value. It's shot really well. I mean, Flanagan, I think, is now a kind of a proven director who knows his kind of way around a camera, knows to set up a good creepy shot, knows how to build tension, and that is definitely on display here. I think obviously now you could speak to him in the same kind of breaths as like James Wan, as the kind of like the modern sort of like horror kind of directors and things like that are really kind of keeping the kind of the genre in the kind of the mainstream. So yeah, he's definitely got a skill, Mr. Flanagan, and it's all on display here. It never goes too kind of like super graphic or anything like that, but there are a couple of cool jump scares. I quite enjoyed the kind of the creepy effects that we see when certain individuals are affected by these spiritual presence. It's somewhat kind of similar to what you've seen before, and I'll touch on that again, but I still quite enjoyed it. And we have these kind of weird kind of creepy kind of shadow figures and stuff which kind of lurk around as well, so I quite kind of enjoyed the effects. I gotta say, there's a reveal that happens. I wouldn't exactly call it a twist, but a reveal that happens towards the end of the kind of the second act, beginning of the third act, that I thought really elevated the threat level, so to speak. You know, ultimately we find out the origin of the evil, I guess you would say, and I gotta say that it was a really compelling kind of bit of exposition ultimately, but still, you know, to kind of really kind of like think, oh man, this is like bad. These people are really in trouble. From what was previously a somewhat kind of well made, but you've kind of seen it all before style movie. So I think, as I say, the third act. That's actually a little bit of a mixed bag, I won't lie, but I think the threat level definitely kind of gets ratcheted up, and I'm thinking, oh, this sounds legitimately kind of dangerous now, and, you know, pretty kind of like, you know, high levels of tension and things like that. I think all the cast do an excellent job, in particular the kind of the young girl which plays the youngest daughter. I thought she hit the right balance between being kind of cute and innocent and also kind of menacing, and it's really helped by some great cinematography here. The lighting in this movie is fantastic, and you know, it kind of changes as the kind of the malevolence kind of presents itself, and you kind of see people kind of underlit, and it kind of really looks kind of quite menacing at times, and other times when it's going to be quite, you know, copacetic, the lighting is softer and kind of, you know, makes the mood more kind of benevolent and things like that. So I've got to say the cinematography here was absolutely great. What doesn't work for me, I mean, let's be honest, I would say it is somewhat of a cookie cutter story. You know, local, you know, people buy a house, or they're in a house which has a dark secret, they're ultimately affected by it, the church comes to help. You know, we've seen this kind of story a lot, if we're being honest. So I don't think it reinvents the wheel, but I don't necessarily think you can be too hard on that, because there's so many stories now that, you know, that you can't help but have a level of familiarity, really. And it's very rare that I think you get a genuinely kind of original sort of story, and even then it doesn't mean it's necessarily good, it just means it's original. So yes, it's a tried and tested kind of a narrative, to be honest with you, but nonetheless I think it's done in a solid manner, and it's kind of you know, it's kind of a, you know, at least an interesting story. I mean, the effects, as I said, I like the effects. Again, there's something you've seen before. You know, people with kind of like whited out eyes, their kind of jaw extends, and they're kind of like a big gaping kind of like maw instead of a mouth. Things like that. Looks cool. Maybe looks a little bit kind of CGI for some people. I had no problems with the effects, if I'm completely honest. Like I said, I think the production value was quite high, but I quite liked it. But again, not particularly kind of original. It's very kind of like checking the boxes that we've kind of seen before. The only real legit critique I have with this movie, if I'm being completely honest, I think the ending was a little weak. As it stands, I think it ends in a somewhat of an unsatisfying manner. Now, there is a post-credit scene which kind of links it to the previous movie, but you know, the film as a whole, you can completely watch it as a separate entity without never seeing the 2014 movie. But yeah, I think the ending, it just didn't quite land for me. It wasn't terrible, but it didn't quite stick the landing completely. So overall, I gotta say, I don't really have any real critiques, real kind of like slam dunk negatives of this movie. I gotta say, it was pretty well made. It's ultimately nothing you haven't seen before, and I think that's probably what most people would say. It's very kind of generic in some aspects, but it's well done. You know, I think this movie at least is entertaining. If not, it's not going to break the mold. But I've got to be honest with you, I think the craft of this movie, the acting, I think the effects and how it's kind of put together with its creepy atmosphere deserves a 7 out of 10 for me. So that's what I want to go for. 7 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.